All right, what's going on? I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about RPE and training methods. This is going to be really good, so let's just dive right in here. So, what we're going to talk about in today's training is the RPE scale, which is a simple way to measure your workout intensity. We're going to talk about why it matters. We're going to talk about common mistakes. We're going to talk about how to apply this in your workouts week to week, and then some takeaways and talk a little bit about training methods as well. So, what is RPE? So, RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. It is a simple way to measure how hard you're working on a scale of 1 to 10, based on the effort that you're putting in, based on the intensity, the strength, the weights, all of it. And so it's 1 through 10, right? So 1 through 4 is very light activity. You really shouldn't be here much. It's an easy warm up. There's no real challenge. 5 to 6 is moderate, so you could hold a conversation, but you're not really working, right? And then 7 to 8 is where it starts getting hard. That's where it's challenging. This is really where we want to hang out. It's sustainable for that set. And then 9 to 10 is like max effort, near failure. You can't do any more reps. Like you've gone to the point of failure. And here's a diagram that just kind of better explains it. So you'll see down at the bottom is a color as well that can kind of help you see it. So wanted to put this in here. So 1 being very light. So that might be like walking, watching TV, like going for a walk. You might rate it a 1, maybe a 2 or a 3 for like a walk. 4 to 6 is where you'll probably start out. So breathing heavy, can hold a conversation, still kind of comfortable, but noticing that it's challenging. 7 to 8 is kind of like short of breath, maybe speaking a sentence. 9 and 10 is where it gets very difficult. And so we want to bounce around the scale during our workouts. And, you know, I'll talk a little bit about that. So really like when you first start out training, right, you're going to have 3 phases of 4 weeks. So the first 4 weeks, during that first phase, say that first week, you're just learning the movements. Like you're learning how to do the workouts, right? So you want to bounce around like a 4 to a 6, right? Maybe hang out at a 5, right? Like you're not pushing yourself to the max yet, right? Because we don't want to injure ourselves. We want to learn the movements. After that first week, maybe you're hanging out around a 7 or an 8. You're starting to push more weight. You're starting to do more reps. And then by the end of that phase is really where you want to hang out around maybe a 9 or a 10 and really push yourself hard. Then when you start the next phase, you'll go back again, right? It's going to be new workouts. So you're going to like try it out again. So back down to a 5 and kind of working your way up. You don't always want to hang out around a 10, right? Because you'll be drained. Your body's not going to recover. And you don't want to hang out around a 4 to a 6 because you're not going to get any results. So why do we do this? So everybody's strength, is different. And so RPE adapts the training to you. It allows you to personalize it. And so we talked about double progression. If we didn't, you'll watch that video after here. And so that tells you when to add weight, right? When you can do, 3 sets of 10 reps, when you can hit all 10 reps, it's telling you, okay, let's up the weight and let the reps fall off. When you hit that 10 reps, it should feel hard, right? And if it doesn't, increase the weight. And so this helps you avoid overtraining, right? It avoids you rating it a 9 or a 10 and going all out every session because you're going to get injured, you're going to get burnt out. That's why a lot of people don't see results. They push themselves way too hard. And they don't remember recovery is just as important. And so it also allows you to track progress, right? As you get stronger, weights that once felt like an RPE 8 might feel like a 6, and that's showing the growth there. So it also helps you track your progress. Some common mistakes I see is that most people usually train too light, is what I often see, especially if you're using bands at home. And so usually either stop your sets too early, you never push yourself into the 8 to 10 range. That's where the transition, that's where the strength is really going to come in. Or maybe you go way too heavy, way too often, and you burn out. So that sweet spot, right? Is learning how to manage it, learning how to go in and out of different areas of that scale. And so here's how we apply it. So, early weeks in the program, sticking to around a 5 to a 6. You're learning the movements, you're finding your groove, right? That's that first week. Mid phase, right? Weeks 2 and 3, you're pushing it to a 7 to an 8. You're challenging yourself, right? You're either increasing the intensity of the band, the strength of the band, or the weights, or you're doing more reps. And then towards the end of that phase, right now you've like learned the movements, you've begun pushing yourself. This is where we really want to push 9 to a 10, right? Push yourself, hard, like do more reps, increase the resistance of the band or go slower, right? And really make it harder for your body. And that's where the progression happens. That's where the strength really comes in. I see a lot of times, you go to the gym, you kind of do your thing, maybe especially with bands, you kind of do what feels a little bit challenging, right? But by the end of the workout, you're like, yeah, that was pretty good. We want to make sure, like, you know, and again, it changes. Early weeks, 5 to a 6, right? You're kind of tired. Mid phase, you're really pushing yourself. You're feeling tired. And then the end of the phase, that last week or two, if you're really getting drained at the end of your workout, knowing when you go into the next phase, you're going to take a break. That first week's going to be a deload week. It's going to be very easy. If you hit the top of your rep range easily, add weight, increase the band, change where you're holding the band. If you can't hit the top of your rep range, add reps until you can, right? If you're supposed to do 10 reps and you're getting to 8, just keep adding reps until you get to 10. Don't increase that weight. And that's going to make it harder. So some key takeaways here is that, RPE is your intensity compass, right? So use it to balance training without overdoing it or underdoing it. And so if you can master the scale, you will never ever waste time at the gym again. You will go to the gym knowing this is my goal, right? I'm going to really push myself today. I'm going to go for a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or a 10. I'm going to, really, and you have that in your head. You know you're going in really wanting to push the limit, wanting to increase the reps, right? You look at what you did last time. All right, I'm going to get a few more reps than I did last time, right? I'm going to increase the weight or the band, right? That is going to allow you to see more progress than you've ever seen in less time, right? You might only be working out 3 days a week, but if you can master the scale and really push it up to the 7, 8, 9, 10, that's where progress happens, even only working out 3 days a week, right? There'll be guys that go to the gym 7 days a week and they push hard. They push a 9 or a 10 every time, and they don't have progress because their body does not recover. Trust me, I'm still learning this, right? This is the first 12 weeks for you. This is just the beginning, right? It might take 9 months to truly understand this, right? I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now, and I'm still trying to master the scale and when to use it, right? So remember, this is a learning phase. Um, this is just the beginning. Couple other things I wanted to touch upon when it comes to working out. Tempo and control, right? So these are your options when you progress. You can either add reps. You can go from a 10 reps to 12, right? If you feel like 10 is easy to get yourself to a higher number on the RPE. You could also slow your tempo. You could go very slow instead of like going really, really fast, right? You want to have a controlled movement. You could add more tension in the band. You could add more weight and you could improve your form. Moving slower, right, increases muscle engagement, protects your joints, and improves control. A lot of times with bands, they can pull back quick, right? You can like come back quick, push it up, come back quick, push it like. But when we're doing like a shoulder press, maybe holding on the band or holding weights, instead of going like up and down and up and down, very controlled motion, slow and controlled motion. You may not get as many reps, right? You might be able to bang 10 really fast. But if you go nice and controlled, you're going to get a way better workout. It's going to feel more difficult. You want to perform your reps with a fairly slow, controlled tempo. Obviously, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing jumping jacks and stuff, it's going to change, right? But for the most part. Now, what I want to talk about quick too, because a lot of people don't understand this too, is breathing. Breathing is so important. And I'm going to talk about this in a second here. So you really want to inhale when you're lowering the weight on your eccentric phase. And you want to exhale as you push or lift the weight. That is your concentric phase. You want to avoid using momentum, right? Like you want to feel your muscles working. You don't want to like come down and like throw it and throw it. You want to have control. You want to use those muscles. And so what this looks like, right? Eccentric and concentric. Say you're doing like a squat, whether you're holding a band, whether you're holding weights, your eccentric motion is when you're coming down. So that is when you inhale, when the weight is easier. You're coming down, and then when you're down, when you go to push up, that's when you're exhaling. You're exhaling on the harder movement. So as you're going out. Same thing for like a bench press, right? You're coming down with the weight you're inhaling. Exhale on the way out. Same thing with shoulder press. Every rep aligned with your breathing. You will notice such a difference. You'll be able to push more weight. You're going to feel way better. And you're going to see better results. And so focus on your breathing and focus on controlled movement. And so focus your attention on the muscle you're working, like that mind muscle connection. So really like focus on it. And so even when you're doing, a movement like an arm curl, right? Your eccentric is coming out, your muscle is stretching, and then you're coming up and your muscle is contracting. That is tearing your muscle, and that is why your muscle regrows. That's what working out is doing. That's how you gain strength. You're actually tearing muscle. And so that's why I say controlled. Like if you're doing an arm curl, exhale, inhale, go slow with it. Like feel the muscle. Don't just like bang your workout out quick. And I know it's a long video here, so I'll tie it up, but I want to explain that, right? So you've got your RPE scale 1 through 10. You rate it after your workout. You have a little dial that you've seen. That's where you're rating the RPE. And make sure that you're starting low, you're working your way up high. When you start a new phase, you start a little bit low again. You learn the workouts and work your way up. And when you're doing workouts, you're breathing on the lighter movement, breathing out on the push. Breathing in, breathing out, tying that into your workout. You'll notice such a difference. You apply these to your workouts, your life will change. You can work out less, get more results. Hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to comment and message me something that you learned in this, and I'll see you in the next one.